everything that you need to know about Amped, how to pick a great template, how to customize it to your brand, and make something that captures 2 to 3 times more email and SMS subscribers. Let's get started. First, we're going to cover how to pick the right template. Then we're going to cover how Amped works, steps, follow-up steps, targeting, elements, and then a little mini lesson on how containers work. And then we'll get into segments, targeting, integrations, and branding a template. Okay, so to kick us off, when you're on the Amped site, you'll go to templates and then find a template that you feel like could work for your brand. Don't worry too much about buttons being rounded or colors. It's really more about the layout, and then we'll get into how we're gonna lay that content out and change the colors and fit it to your brand. Templates are segmented by incentives, so discounts, which is most effective. And for today, let's just pick Knightsbridge. It's not a heavy image-based template, but you can add in your own images. And here's some examples of how people have used the Amped template in the past. So right away, when you go to build your own, email and SMS capture as options. For today, let's pick email and SMS capture. And then it's going to ask us what type of SMS consent do we need. With Klaviyo, we can fully consent them with just having the right legal copy. And with other SMS providers, we may need to reply why. For today, let's stick with Klaviyo. And then since we're Klaviyo, we'd recommend doing phone input field on both mobile and desktop. You also have the option to do tap to text. Let's stick with phone input field for now. You've got a preview of what it's going to look like. You can also preview this in your browser, which will just load up a staged preview so you can see exactly what this is going to look like, obviously without any branding. So you've got 10% off, claim my code, decline the intro discount, claim my code, or if we close this, we get the follow-up step, we can carry on. But let's go ahead and open this in the editor. And so now we've opened a view-only template, and if we like it, we can use it. For now, let's just look at it a little bit. We've got those steps like we were looking at. We've got follow-up steps, targetings on our left, and then we finish out by giving them a discount code and a reminder bar. Everything in here is customizable, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's imagine that we're doing this for The Healthy Place. The Healthy Place is a great brand, a great client of Amped, so let's do an example with them. So if we go ahead and get started, we're going to grab that URL. We'll just throw that in there. So here we go, The Healthy Place. And for today, let's do just an extra bit of a brand new account for them. And so right away when you sign up, you'll see that you get an onboarding checklist. The first part, to finish customizing that campaign that we just created, adding Amped to the site, and then syncing contacts to whatever ESP you're using, such as Klaviyo. And that is it. So once we start customizing it, add it to the site, adding it to Klaviyo, we're going to get into a few more things. But first, let's go over in detail how this campaign actually works. We'll come back to targeting, segments, integrations. For now, let's look at, we've got step 1 here, which is sort of a yes, no choice. And then we do the email step, and then we do phone, and then we follow that up with discount code. And then we've got our reminder bar as a follow-up there. These follow-up steps are if someone were to close this step, they're going to get the follow-up. And so also if someone were to reload, like if this came up and someone reloaded the page or went to a different page or came back, they would get the follow-up step. But then for the follow-up step here, we've got this set to remain on this step if someone were to go to another page or reload the page, which gives them an opportunity to click this and bring them back into the flow. So that is how steps work. And then inside of steps, you have all your elements, you have your layers panel over here, and then your properties for that particular element. This is important in regards to these relatively positioned elements because these are one after the other. In this particular template, it's set up, and I can just hit Command Z to undo. It's set up so everything's going up from the bottom, and it's all about how we lay out content inside of these containers. So we'll come right back to the containers. Let's just quickly look at targeting. We've got 4 anonymous visitors, which is our segment. We've got triggers, which is time on page. You could do any triggers you want. Maybe it's time on page, or in addition to that, an exit intent for desktop or an activity. And then you can set rules, which could be based on a URL or traffic source, or if they've seen something or haven't done something. You can get as detailed as you want with these rules. You could even do custom code or check for a cookie, things like that. Getting back to our list here though, let's quickly do a little mini lesson on containers. So let's drag in a new container, and it's just going to have a little placeholder for us. And if we take a text element, drag that in, now we have text inside of a container. And let's just zoom in a little bit. I'm holding down Command and scrolling with my mouse, or you've got zoom controls here as well. So we have this container. Let's give this container a background. I'm going to make it blue, and we've got our text here, which has got this nice gray. And if I were to add in padding in that container, maybe 10 pixels of padding, and then I've got my content. This container just has auto or unset here in this case. So it doesn't really have a size. It's going to take the size of the content inside of it. We'll also notice that it has a layout, which is vertical center. If we were to change this, you really wouldn't see much happen here. So let's change this to say hi, text goes here. If I change the layout, left, right, center, top and bottom is not going to do much because this container is taking the height. But if I were to give this a height of say 150, I could then align elements to the top or the bottom. A lot of times if you're using this just to put text inside of it, it may be best to leave it without a specified height, so that way it can grow with the content inside of it, versus if we had a height that was just too small, we would get something like this where our content is overflowing. And if we didn't want that to show, we could go to visibility and hide. Well, that's going to hide the whole thing. We could do the overflow and scrolling, and we could actually say we want it to scroll, or we could hide it. So now everything is still center, but we're hiding the rest of it. So we're getting a bit detailed here, but let's go back out and look at how that layout works. We could also say horizontal. So now we have all those elements horizontally positioned. And then just keep in mind with things like margin. So I could click on the container, I have margin. I could put some margin to the bottom of this to separate it from the rest. And then I have my padding, which we set, but we could remove that if we wanted to. And then these could have padding, or we could have margin. We could say margin on the right of this, maybe 10 pixels. If we put some at the bottom, it may create a layout that looks something like this, because remember, we have this container, which is now center in the middle. We could say center at the top or center at the bottom, and you can start to see how that's laying out. So that is containers. More on that in the university under containers, but it's all about how you lay out your elements inside of containers, and that's the web in general. One thing to keep in mind too is you probably noticed that my content was the same on both of these. This is just a mobile version, which you set up your content, and this is a desktop breakpoint. So really, if I edit this, it's the same content, but you'll notice here I have 40 pixel font. Over here, I've got 100. If I were to say clear that out, it would change on. So now it's the inherited 40 pixels from the smaller one. So if I change this, and you also notice that a few different elements are changing at the same time while I'm changing this. That's because this element is actually using a style. Now the style we've connected, we could detach an element from the style to start editing that particular one individually, or we could relink it back to our H1, which is here. If we get rid of all elements that use H1, that H1 style would go away. But now we've linked it to H1, which is helpful when we've got multiple steps. So these are H1 as well. So every time I'm changing this H1, it's going to change on all of my steps. So I'll keep that left aligned. And then over here, I think we had 100. So that looks good. That's really how our template was to begin with. So we talked about styles. This just means that there's an animation on it. So if we look at animation, and we always want to be on the base viewport here, and then this is fade in. And then on the container here, we have fade in up subtle. So it's going to give us that nice crisp animation. We have animate once. Since it's a style, it's used on multiple steps. These styles are going to be repeated. We wouldn't want the animation to run on every single step. Okay, now let's look at how we handle fonts. This has Montserrat from the template itself. On the healthy place, we're using Fira Sans in a lot of places, and we also have the logo. So for example, we have our brand here, as if we had the brand guide. I've got the light logo and the darker version, and then I've got a couple of different brand colors. Let's grab this lighter green, and maybe we'll go ahead and export this lighter logo, save that out, and then let's head back to our editor, and let's start customizing this thing. So if we are going to start setting things like fonts, manage fonts, add a font, let's add in Fira Sans is the font that we've been using. Let's go with a larger weight. Let's drop in our logo, Healthy Place logo light. And then maybe here on desktop, it's just inheriting here. So this is 160, this one's using 200. There we go, a little bit larger on the desktop version. This looks good, maybe we bring that up to 200. And then we've got our Fira Sans. We also have this, which is a button group. This is a particular important type of element because it has button actions. There's a few different types of buttons. There's a button group. There's a regular text button, which is just text inside of it that you can edit, versus this button group has elements inside of it. You can have multiple elements inside of the button group. And that button group has layout, just like a container. And then you also have close buttons. Those are a pre-built button type, which comes out of the box with a close step. You could set something different there, like maybe go to a particular step if you wanted to almost auto advance. More on that in the university. But for this example, button actions are go to step, which takes us to the next step. Here we have capture data and go to the next step. So out of the box, all these button actions are set correctly. You can change them if you want to create some sort of custom functionality here on this follow-up. So if it closes, it goes here, and then we're going to take them back to step 2 to go ahead and capture that email. So that's how buttons work. And we also have hover states. So we can set our hover state. Maybe we want to grab that fill, make it a little bit darker. But we need to grab that color from Figma. So let's not forget about that. Let's go ahead and start branding this. Let's get the right colors in here. And then on our hover, maybe we'll just make this a little bit brighter. And then on the Healthy Place, we've got the button text. It's more like this. And I think maybe we go with the lighter one. Let's use that lighter one. I think we grabbed the wrong green. That looks good. Let's get rid of this, bring it back, and then we can make it a little bit lighter. Let's actually go and see. Okay, so it does have a darker hover state. If we know that color, we can go ahead and grab that, or we could try to find it by doing a few different things. If you know how to edit CSS, you could grab it like this, or if you have access to your brand guide or style guide, that should be easy to find. Okay, so now we have the appropriate hover state. We've got our logo in, and now you've got an ad that could completely work. A few things to do though is we're using styles in most places, but we just want to scroll through and just find any other things that need to be set. So this is Montserrat. It looks close, but I know we're using Fira Sans. So let's go through and make sure that we've got the correct weights and fonts. Go ahead and just do that for all of the elements on this ad. And you'll see some of them are styles. For example, here we've got our second chance. We've just made it Fira. And then here it's also using that style. So it's already set for us. But some things we may have to come in and change. For example, this last step doesn't use a lot of styles. That's not linked to a style, although it's called H1. And then so here we still need to change this to Fira Sans. And that's not linked to a style because we wanted a different font size for this confirmation step. So we're just setting the correct fonts. Let's assume that I've gone through and finished setting all the fonts and the colors. Now we'd want to just double check our targeting. Is this what we're wanting to create? An entrance campaign after 2 seconds. Rules here are looking good. We want to go check our segments. So let's go back to our list here. I want to go back to segments and targeting. So for my segments, just like you would set in Klaviyo, you've got already known visitors, anonymous visitors, all visitors. These come out of the box with Amped, and you can create as many segments as you want or edit these. Most campaigns should, most of the time, target anonymous visitors, unless you want to do maybe a notification to all visitors. Also, in and not already known visitors, these are Shopify specific, maybe orders or account, or things maybe UTM medium equals email. We already have their email and we know who they are. So anonymous visitor says is not in the segment already known visitors, and that helps us determine an anonymous visitor. So in already known visitors, we may want to edit that and say if they've gone to any of these pages in their lifetime, they're already known, or if we turn on the Klaviyo integration, we'd have access to Klaviyo identity is known. So if Klaviyo knows who they are, Amped will know who they are and will be in the already known visitors, which is used in the anonymous visitors segment. So that is segments. We also have integrations that we want to check. So we need to make sure that Amped is on the site by either installing the Shopify app and then enabling it on our current theme, or we can manually install the code snippet, which is just putting it on all the pages. The Shopify app is just simply to install it, and then it'll walk you through just clicking to add it onto the theme. You've got Klaviyo and you've got PostScript. Klaviyo is an API key as well as PostScript, and then you pick how you want those to go in. They go in seamlessly anytime you're capturing that data. You can do Shopify unique discount codes, in which it's a different element type that you drag in a discount code to the actual spot where you want to give someone a discount. And then you can generate and set rules for discount codes. Google Analytics is on by default. It's sending through events so you can track what's happening inside of Google Analytics. But now you've got a great campaign. You're ready to go. You can publish this live. And then as soon as you're publishing it live, you can also come back and you can schedule it on and off later. So maybe it's on now. You could turn it off, or you could schedule it on and off as well. And then split testing, you just hit duplicate the split test. This will create a draft state. And now we can start testing things like color or copy, whatever it is. We've got a whole section in the university about what converts best. And that's it. So we've branded a template. We've set our integrations. We've added it to the site. We're making sure everything's going into Klaviyo. And we just have to make sure that we've got that Amped code snippet on the page and we're ready to go. That is the crash course to Amped. Please check the university if you need to deep dive on any of these topics. And we look forward to working with you. If you want our team to check anything over or make sure it all looks good, please let us know. We're here to help. We want you to be successful. Thank you.